Admitting I actually had a problem was really hard for me for a long time.
You didn't have an off button.
If I had one, I wanted 100.
We'll also talk about how you came into our lives, which was, of course, Made in Chelsea.
The more successful the show was, the more my anxiety grew. I really felt that I became this character that I told myself was part of my personality. This was just me. I was the wild party girl, the one that would have a funny story to tell the next day. It just wasn't me. But I just kept wearing this mask. At 14, I experienced sexual assault when I was really drunk, and carrying that shame on top of the kind of self-esteem damage that I had from the bullying meant that I was fragile.
Hi, Millie.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. And congrats on your book. Great front cover, by the way.
Thank you. It's out today, and I came up with the title myself, which I'm really pleased about because I think it just really sums up how I felt as a drinker, but also, I think it's going to start conversations with people.
Without a doubt. It's called Bad Drunk, and obviously we live in the UK, which has a really interesting culture when it comes to drinking. It's very much celebrated and hugely normalised, so I think it feels like a really maverick thing to do, to write a book about drinking in this way. But I'm imagining it wasn't an easy book to write.
It wasn't easy. It was painful at times, but I definitely felt all the way through that it was something I really wanted to do, because I just get so many messages from women, particularly, and mums, who've seen me talk about my decision to stop drinking on Instagram, and they all were asking for advice and tips, and I just wanted to do the book so that they would have, a guide to help them change their relationship with alcohol.
Yeah, so you've not had a drink since August 2022. That's amazing.
2.5 years.
It's amazing.
2.5 years, yeah. I actually messaged my sober coach telling him about the book. And sometimes you just forget that, like, the milestones. And I was like, it's like just gone so fast, but best decision I ever made.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, to look back on that. Like, 2.5 years is a long time, and to go,
yeah,
that's amazing that I've not done that. The irony of today is I have got a slight hangover.
Okay, how many drinks last night? Okay,
not a lot,
but
I am a lightweight.
I have zero judgment.
No, I know you're not judging me. I'm not even judging myself.
Okay,
I had a fun time, quite frankly. I had a really good time. It was great, but I was like, why today? Why today? But I think it's such a worthwhile conversation to be having. Obviously, sometimes the conversation around alcohol is taken in extremes. We're talking about it when it's alcoholism and there's, deep-seated issues and it's a daily problem. But I like the fact that you've written this book, not necessarily from that standpoint. You talk about drinking being destructive in your life and something that you knew you had an issue with, but you don't, or you wouldn't class yourself as an alcoholic.
Yeah, I hate that the name alcoholic. I think there's so much stigma attached to just any kind of drinking problem. But I didn't have the kind of dependency where I was drinking every day to get through the day. I would get withdrawal from alcohol. I would get very severe anxiety, and I would self-medicate by drinking again, or with prescription pills to cope with how awful my hangovers were, which was also just a very unhealthy, toxic kind of cycle that I got into. But admitting I actually had a problem was really hard for me for a long time, because I felt that there was so much shame around it. And also people kept saying to me, oh, you had too much to drink, but, you don't have a problem. So people kept kind of saying to me, oh, come on, you don't have a problem. And then I started to think, well, if I did have a problem, I would be judged. So I felt like I just kept telling myself, oh, it's not that bad. And over the years, things would happen, and I was like, this isn't, like, that's not okay. And I was kind of scaring myself but I'd have periods where I wouldn't drink at all for maybe a month or 6 weeks, and I'd feel really good. So I kind of convinced myself I don't have a problem because I can stop. But then when I went back, the same things would always happen. I'd always try and limit the amount I had. And once I'd had, 2 or 3, all my resolve would crumble. And I never knew when the kind of responsible amount was. Like, I just would have a couple and then just keep chasing the feeling it was giving me and be the person that just wanted the night to go on and on.
You didn't have an off button?
Didn't have an off button. If I had one, I wanted 100.
I've got friends like that who have not got off buttons, and I've always looked at them and sort of thought, I wish I was more like that. I tend to have a couple of drinks and then I'm really tired and I just think I want to go to bed, and then I end up calling the night quits way too early, and everyone's like, oh, you missed so-and-so did this, or like this was a really fun moment. But I've got friends that have exactly the same thing. There's no off button. You're out, you're having a great time. And I guess when you look at whether other people are saying you've got a problem or not, or what the definition is of a problem, I think with anything, whether it's alcohol or it could be anything that you know is detrimental, it's a problem if you say so. If you know that your life could be better, could be anything. Could be anything. But I don't think we should have these parameters that say, if you're drinking X amount, it's a problem. It's if you feel that it's derailing you in life in some ways, or you could be living in a better way, then you decide whether it's a problem or not. And you had a specific moment you talk about in the book that was a bit of a wake-up call where you thought, right, I have pushed it too far, enough's enough. So just tell us about how that happened, and in that moment, what really got you rethinking about your drinking habits?
In the last year before I decided to stop, I had a couple of nights out, a couple of situations where they were big warning signs. One was, actually two of them were weddings, one was a hen. Often these occasions where the kind of drinking is kind of part of a big social gathering. And the last one was at a wedding I was at with Hugo, and I'd planned to not drink very much, really kind of been like, okay, this is a really important wedding. It was one of like Hugo's best friends. And I don't remember much after the champagne reception, like just, it's all a blur, but it all just went a bit petong. I was crying, I was angry, I was just that kind of drunk person at the party that other people are trying to like get away from, because I was just such a mess. And it's really uncomfortable to think about myself at that wedding, but it's also such a good reminder why I don't go back to drinking. And a couple of days after that, I had a big argument with Hugo at the wedding, and the next day he said to me, it had happened, so many times, where he said, like, I'm really like done. If this keeps happening, it's going to end our marriage. And he didn't give me an ultimatum of like, if you ever drink again from today, it's over. He just said, I can't keep going through this with you. And I also knew that it was really damaging our relationship. But it took me then about another 5 days, and then I had my like last drink. That basically happened after drinking with friends on holiday, going to bed, not super late, I wasn't particularly drunk that night, but we'd been out drinking a few nights in a row on holiday, and I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning. We were staying on a boat, and I woke up and felt very intense anxiety straight away, but I wasn't able to tell if it was real or not. Like I went straight to a panic attack, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I couldn't get air in. My throat felt like it was closing, and I started to black out. I woke Hugo up, and I started to black out. I was on the floor, and I could see my children's faces, and I really thought, I wasn't aware I'm having a panic attack, I'm hungover, this is anxiety. It was like I was in the panic attack and thought I was about to die. And when I calmed down, and like later that morning, I was really shaken up, and I went for a hike with Hugo just to like talk, and I said, I need to stop drinking. And it was the scariest thing to say, because I knew once I'd said it out loud, I was going to have to stick to it. And it felt so scary. Like I felt like I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I didn't know how I was going to socialise, how I was going to have fun. I thought that was the only way I could have fun. And I was terrified at that point, but I knew that was my rock bottom.
Yeah, I guess also saying it out loud, you have to trust yourself that you're going to stick to it. And that always feels scary. You say something, you declare it out loud to the person you love the most, you've got to try and stick to it. And even knowing where to start, I think, is difficult. And like so many people, I'm sure, listening to this, and like you say, the disproportionate amount of mums that have reached out to you, because we're fed this sort of messaging that when you're a knackered mum, you get to the end of the day, you have a glass of wine, it chills you out, it relaxes you, it takes the edge off. All of this sort of stuff that we're really used to, it's totally normalised. No one would shame a mum for doing so. But it can be damaging, of course. It can accentuate anxiety. It can lead to drinking a lot more if you haven't got an off button or if that is your proclivity.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one to then change all of these ingrained habits. And like you say, having fun. I think that is one of the trickiest things. Is that I had a big period of sobriety in my 30s, not for any huge reason. I just thought I did a lot of drinking in my 20s, and I thought I'm just going to see how I might socialise outside of that alcohol framework, and what it's like to go to a gig, what it's like to go to a wedding. And it's really unnerving at first. And everyone's around you completely pissed and, you know, talking a million miles an hour and wanting to dance, and you feel like you're a little bit out of the swing of things. How was that sort of first influx of social activity and having to put yourself in a social setting?
It was hard at first. It really felt like my security blanket had been taken away, and I had to kind of look at why I felt so uncomfortable and really realise that actually I'm quite introverted, but I thought I was an extrovert. So I was like, oh, but I love parties. And actually a lot of the things I thought were really fun, I realised without alcohol weren't fun for me. And I went to quite a few weddings and did not dance at all.
They're so long. Why are weddings so long?
Oh, so
Why?
long.
They're so long.
But I gave myself permission to leave early.
Yeah.
I'd make sure, you know, I saw the first dance, was there for like the important bits.
And then you can sneak out. No one knows.
I would sneak out.
I've done so many ninja vanishes at weddings and no one knows. And they're like, did you see the band? Yep.
Yeah.
Nope.
But especially when you've got kids as well, it's easy, like...
Leave.
You just got to go.
You just got to go. So you've got new rules, I guess, for yourself as to how you will navigate a social setting.
To just be kinder to myself. So kind of number one is like having a plan. So like, okay, how long do I need to be there? Like, if, you know, just working out like, okay, I'm going to give myself an exit at like 10 p.m. I know by then everyone's going to be quite drunk. I'm going to have a car booked to take. So I know, okay, I'm going to be there for this amount of hours. And then I'm like, okay, who am I going with? Who can I sit with? Who can I kind of find that's going to be good company for me, that's going to make it easier, and whether it might be other people that don't drink or just somebody that I'm really close to, and I'll just kind of have like a wingman. And then bring my own drinks that I like to drink, so my favourite non-alcoholic spirits or like Trip, or just I'll just bring things in my bag, literally just show up and be like,
it's a great idea.
Just literally go up to the barman and be like, can you make this into some kind of mocktail for me? And lots of people now are offering good alternatives. So kind of I've got something I like to drink, and just giving myself permission to leave if it's too difficult. And I don't find so much that I need to do that now. I know that if I get tempted to drink or I feel super triggered, or I can either call one of my friends who's basically like my sponsor. She's like become one of my best friends, and she's sober as well. So we're like that person for each other. I could call my sober coach. I could call my husband if he wasn't there with me, and I can just leave. Or if I just need to just regroup, just go and shut myself in the bathroom and do some breathing to ease kind of any anxiety that's coming up. But it's got easier. I don't feel now that it's a choice that I'm making. I'm not thinking about it every day. I'm not waking up and going, I need to decide not to drink today. It's kind of become my lifestyle now.
Is it still very much a day at a time? Because I think when you proclaim that you're never going to drink again, that pressure can feel overwhelming for people, and is probably the reason people then do start drinking again, because they say that. And you state right at the start of the book, you say, I can't promise I won't drink again. And I felt reading that like you were saying it more for yourself than anyone, because it's a huge ask to set yourself any goal for life. It's insurmountable.
Exactly. And I do find it actually very helpful to say I don't drink, and I choose to not, you know, just be like, I could just have one, or, you know, I know other people that are sober curious and don't drink, but maybe once a year might have a glass of champagne. But now that I've learned so much more about myself and about the way that I specifically react to alcohol, I really have no plan to drink again. But yes, saying to myself, who knows, like, hopefully life is long and you never know, and I don't want to beat myself up if I do have a drink and then beat myself up and then get into a kind of shame spiral again. Because I think often people start a sobriety journey, they're sober curious, and after a month or two they get tempted, they have a drink, and then they think, oh fuck it, now I'm just gonna might as well just go straight back in and start drinking again. And actually, you can just look at it as if it made you feel bad and just go, okay, well, that just showed me why I was doing it in the first place, and just keep going.
Yeah, I think it's so important to talk about that moment of whether it's temptation or relapse with anything, because it can be such a horrible stumbling block and reason to beat yourself up and really spiral into negative self-talk that isn't helpful at all. I remember because I had eating disorders, was bulimic, and then I got really healthy and in a good space. And then I had a bulimia relapse. It was a one-off, but it was really far down the line. And I could feel myself thinking, oh my God, I'd done 7 years by that point. I'm fucked. I've gone back to square one. But actually, I really did a lot of work to choose in that moment to go, it was a blip. No, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It was a blip. And it again proves that I don't want to go back to that. I want to go back to feeling really, really good. And I think it's so important to remember that it's not the end of everything. It's just a little reminder that you don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. So let's rewind back because...
Yes, sorry, I realised I just like...
No.
I jump about.
This podcast. The podcast
ADHD is like...
Babe, I'm there. I'm the tangents galore.
Okay.
I like to jump about. That's the whole point of it. But I think it's really important in this context to also talk about how you came into our lives, which was, of course, made in Chelsea. You were only 21. I actually hadn't realised how young you were. And it was a huge deal. It was a cultural shift where we were all of a sudden imbibing all of these, reality TV shows that were so exciting and feeling like we knew everybody on the TV. And you guys were giving us a lot. It was exposing for you and your life and your dynamics and people assuming that they know who you are. And I'm imagining if you're now actually identifying as a bit of an introvert, that might have led to more social situations where you needed to take the edge off with drink, or certainly the temptation was everywhere because you're being invited to the BAFTAs and all of these parties and, you're 21, why are you going to say no?
Exactly. It was a time in my life and I was definitely already partying and drinking a lot anyway. And then there was the anxiety that was already there that I'd carried through my teens. And then I thought the show was going to give me some kind of validation. I didn't have the self-awareness to realise that's why I wanted to do it at the time. I was just like, oh, fuck it, why not? Like, this will be fun. And then my anxiety was the more the show did well, the more successful the show was, the more my anxiety grew. And then the more I was drinking to feel calm and then feeling awful the next day. And it just was a cycle.
Yeah. And, when you're 21 and you're going to all of these parties, what 21-year-old would say, I don't want to go, or I'm not going to have a drink? Like, of course, it was on a plate for all of you guys. And I was, in the same sort of boat at 21. It's a free-for-all. You're just going out and having a great time, and it's celebrated. And also, when you're known as a bit of a party girl, it's like, oh, she's so much fun. What's she going to do tonight? And there's almost a pressure. Yeah, it's a performative element of it, that Millie's going to be on a table dancing at some point. Everybody get ready.
I really felt that I became this character that I told myself was part of my personality. This was just me. I was the wild party girl, the one that would have a funny story to tell the next day, the one that would do something to get everyone laughing. And it just wasn't me. But I just kept wearing this mask. And I kept going all the way through my 20s like that. But then the difficult thing also after being on the show is being in the public eye, basically growing up, as an adult in the public eye, and people with camera phones. And then you've got the added pressure and fear of, oh my God, I can't remember half of last night. And did people take pictures? What was I doing? How did I get home?
Terrifying.
Who were those random people I was at an after party with? And they have phones, and living in that fear of the constant fear of getting caught out and getting pictured hammered, which did happen to me a couple of times, and the anxiety of that, and then that leading to more drinking.
Yeah, it's a vicious circle. I mean, you call it your lowest public moment, where you'd been to the Monaco, you're wincing as I even say it. We've all got them. But the Monaco Grand Prix that you attended, and that for you felt like a personal low point. Why?
Because I just had no idea how bad it was. I was so wasted that I just couldn't comprehend, like, okay, there's going to be, I just wasn't I wasn't thinking logically or responsibly. Like, you can't get that wasted and then be stumbling about at such a public event and not expect there to be pictures everywhere. And I was going through a divorce, and I was then with my now husband, and there was a lot of press attention around that, but all of that was creating a lot of anxiety, and hence why I got so wasted, because I can really look back and see a pattern. The more anxious I was, the more likely I was to go completely off the rails, because I would just drink, I was drinking more and more heavily to cope with those feelings, and I was just full of nerves and then pouring, fuel on the fire, and it was all going a bit wrong.
I think it's so great that you talked about, and I could tell from reading it that it wasn't a fun part of the book to write, but I think it's one of the most important bits. I think not only does it give all of us permission to look back on, moments that felt mortifying to us disproportionately, because other people would look and go and wouldn't judge you, or would just think we've all been there or whatever. But I think when you've got that level of mortification, you feel humiliated about a moment, I think it's so important to know that nearly all of us, probably all of us, if we're willing to admit it, have been in a place where we felt like we've acted inauthentically, or we've done something we regret, or people have seen us acting in a way that we regret. And for you to actually just put that in a book, and you even say there's every chance that all of these pictures will now resurface and be at the top of the Google search when they put your name in, because you're talking about it, but you're still willing to put that in there because you know it will help people and it will get people reflecting.
It's also my greatest reminder why I don't drink. Mm-hmm. So if I'm ever tempted, just Google my name, just be like, that's why. But I'm like, my children are gonna read this book and see those pictures, and that's gonna make me have to have some very honest and conversations with them. But I wish I'd read this book when I first stopped drinking, but I also really wish I'd had something like this I could have read as a young girl.
Yeah, me too. I think, I'm a bit older than you, but I think we grew up in an era where, my generation, we were drinking in parks. It was completely normal. Yeah. You were drinking all sorts of mixed spirits from your parents' alcohol cupboard.
Just taking a little bit from each bottle.
Yeah. Pernod, no idea what that is. That's going in. Robinson's orange juice, yeah, whack that on top. We were just disgusting concoction of stuff.
Yeah.
But everybody did it. And again, as a teenager, there still is an immense amount of peer pressure that if your friends are all doing it, you should do it too. Come on, don't be boring. It's probably when I stopped drinking, actually, in my 30s, I remember someone saying to me at the Brits, because I wouldn't have a drink, oh my God, don't be boring. And it so rang in my ears. And I actually left because I just thought I can't deal with this anymore. And it rang in my ears. And I really, at the time, I wasn't probably as secure as I am now in who I believe I am. But I thought, God, am I just so boring? What's wrong with me? And that is something you have to somehow negate when you choose not to drink when you go out. It's tough.
It's tough. I think there's less of that now because there is this sober curious movement, and more and more young people are also choosing not to drink. And there's just this conversation that's starting to happen now. But I still think that there aren't enough kind of sober role models for people. And what really helped me actually was looking at articles which were talking about sober celebrities, like actresses that I looked up to. I just remember thinking, God, they just must be so strong that they can, just choose not to drink. So I was so jealous, and I thought, okay, that's interesting that it's making me jealous. What is that showing me? And I just thought I'm not good enough to not drink. I don't have the strength, or I don't have the I just thought they must just have such, so much confidence to not need alcohol.
Not at all. They've just made the choice. Yeah.
And then when I realised I could make that choice for myself, and it was as easy as just realising I had the power and strength to say no. It sounds like such a small, insignificant thing, but it didn't feel like I had the power for so long. Like alcohol had power over me.
I think most of us feel like that, certainly in social settings. I think also when we root back to the sort of drinking culture here, and certainly my generation, your generation growing up, where it was so normalised and celebrated as a teen, and maybe that is shifting slightly. But you had also that added burden of being bullied at school. So it became almost a crutch for you that you would drink to navigate these sort of toxic dynamics that you found yourself in, feeling like a bit of an outsider. And I think anything we've been through in childhood like that, you tend to bring it into adulthood, whether you like it or not. And even if you're around people that love you, you can still have the propensity to feel like, I'm the outsider, I'm the one that doesn't fit in here. Does that ring true to you, would you say?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think since I was at school, feeling like I didn't fit in, feeling like an outsider, not feeling like I fit into kind of groups of people, and just not knowing myself. And then in my 20s, I'd say just being bullied really affected how I formed female friendships and trust issues, and just not knowing myself. So the biggest gift really for me from my alcohol-free journey has been the connection to myself, and actually realising I didn't love myself at all. And I thought I was into kind of wellness and doing all the wellness things before, but I hadn't really scratched the surface and done any of the deeper work on myself. I just wasn't willing to go there and look at all the uncomfortable, sticky stuff that was there. And now I've been able to kind of shine a light on the darkest parts of myself and bring them out into the light, put them in a book. Hugo's like, my husband's like, you've just got one really weird way of doing therapy.
I love it.
Don't talk to your parents. Put it in a book. Read it.
That's what I did. Read this, guys. This is why I'm so fucked up. Read this. No, it's a good way of doing it. It's airing all your laundry, and it helps other people. It helps other people. I think it's a really healthy way of doing it. It's a brilliant way. And what's so interesting is you say in the book, you assumed that once you stopped drinking, all your problems would go. But actually, and what you've just expressed here, is that when you stop drinking, you actually have the clarity to see them. Sometimes for the first time. What did surface with that clarity that you had not been looking at or were positively shunning because you didn't want to go there?
I think one thing I was kind of oblivious to for a long time is that I was depressed, and I was living with high functioning depression. Actually, when I read your book, Happy, it really spoke to me, because I'd been putting on a mask for a long time and going to work and being like I'm okay, like I can get through the day. But as I was getting home and just like crying and, just literally being so low when I was at home and didn't want to get out of bed, just lost interest in food. I became afraid of everything, insomnia, just really not well. And I just reached a point where I was sober, but all the wellness things, all the other things I was doing weren't working anymore. And my anxiety I thought it had gone away when I stopped drinking for a couple of months. I was like, this is great. Like I'm healed. Alcohol was the problem. Removed the alcohol, and I've cracked the code. And then suddenly the anxiety started coming back really like strong. I was like, but I've done this amazing thing for myself. Like, how can I be feeling this? And then it was like, because I can feel and I'm not numbing. And that was really difficult. And I actually ended up having a bit of a breakdown, really, that I kind of describe as a burnout moment, where it actually happened at the BAFTAs last year. I'd been having panic attacks more and more frequently, and I had a massive panic attack at the BAFTAs, and I just felt myself like break when I was literally trying to get out of the building to like not show anyone what was going on. And I was visibly just like shaking, and I got outside the building. Luckily there was no photographers, because it was like the end of the evening, and I'd been holding it in like all day, and I just was like hysterically sobbing. And I knew from that moment, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get help for this, because I just can't keep going. And I went on meds the next morning, because I'd had some at home for a while and I didn't want to take them, because I felt a lot of shame and stigma around needing meds. And I'd had them sitting in my like top drawer for like a couple of weeks, and I was like, okay, now I'm like at a point where I need to get out of this place that I'm in. So I went on them, and that was nearly a year ago.
And do you still take them?
I still take them.
I think this is, again, fucking important because there is stigma around medication. I felt it myself. I haven't been on medication for a while, but I took antidepressants for a fair few, I don't know how long, maybe 6 months to sort of get myself out of a very black hole about 12 years ago. And I could not have functioned without them. There's no way I could have turned up and done a live radio show, been seen in public. There's absolutely no way. And I think you've got to do what you've got to do to help you cope with the reality of stuff you're facing, maybe from the past or issues that you need to look at or just your general mental health. If you've got to do it, you've got to do it. And there should be zero shame attached to that decision at all.
It's really given me it's given me my life back, because I've been fighting this, this battle that nobody could see in my mind for so many years, and it's really allowed me to do the work, to do the cognitive therapy, to do the EMDR, to do all the different types of therapy that have really helped me to find those trauma points and really go there and do the work to let go and release. And the books really brought a lot up, but I've literally done 2 therapy sessions a week for a year. I've been so focused on feeling well, and I at some points thought, can I do the book? Is this okay for my mental health? And had to really take a pause and be like, is really thinking about everything I'm doing, is that am I doing too much? And sometimes pulling back a bit and turning work down, which can feel scary, but I knew I couldn't get back to that point I was at a year ago. And I just feel really grateful that I've been able to accept that I needed meds. I don't know how long I'll be on them, but it's allowed me to do the deeper work. And I was so worried that if I was taking meds, I wouldn't be able to feel. And if I couldn't feel, I thought I can't access the emotions. I need to heal stuff from the past. But actually, I've tried 2 different types now, and the ones I'm on, I think I've found a good balance. I can still cry. I don't cry as much. I used to cry a lot every day, which was part of the depression, and I just thought was just hormonal, or had just become normal for me. And I love crying, but I don't want to spend all my energy crying every single day.
The odd weep is fine, but not all day. Yeah. Not all day. When you think back over your life, it's hard, I've been asked this before, and it's hard to pinpoint where or when do you think all of this started? Depression, anxiety, how old, do you know?
I think I went to boarding school when I was 10, and I think that definitely created some issues, feelings of abandonment, because we didn't have mobile phones, so we were very cut off, and it was a couple of hours from, maybe 2 hours from where my parents lived. It wasn't weekly boarding, so I loved it. You could ride horses every day, you ride ponies every day, and it was in this beautiful bit of the countryside in Dorset. But I was 10, and I couldn't call my parents. I could only speak to them once a week, and we literally wrote letters. And I remember the first few months, 6 months maybe, feeling really alone and really scared, and that really stayed with me. And then being bullied from about the age of 12, 13. And then at 14, I mentioned this in the book, I experienced sexual assault when I was really drunk. The first time I got kind of wasted, the first time I passed out from drinking. And I think that really got me off on the wrong foot with alcohol, because I kept repeating the same behaviour where I would drink to kind of forget the shame, and carrying that shame on top of the kind of self-esteem damage that I had from the bullying meant that I was fragile. And also the depression, I think, was from the bullying as well. And I did get diagnosed when I was about 16, but I didn't want help at that age. I just felt angry at all adults and anyone basically trying to help me. I just was like, no, I felt very alone, and like I just needed to try and fix it within myself. But it took me a long time to be ready to actually, get help.
I think especially when it comes to sexual assault and shame, which is the worst feeling ever. The worst. I've had huge bouts of shame, and it's so debilitating. Here.
Yeah.
It's all here, and I get it here, and then I get these tingly pins and needles on the top of my head when I'm in that, I could almost bring it on just thinking about it. It's the worst feeling. And the only way, I think, having been lucky enough to do therapy myself, I think you do realise the only way to take the sting out of it is to look at that thing that's caused you the shame. I mean, you've beautifully written about this and put it out there for everybody, to actually look at it. And also, especially when it comes to sexual assault, to go, you didn't do anything wrong. Like, this is not about you in this situation. You were a victim of something, rather than embodying it.
I shouldn't be ashamed that happened to me. And having these conversations in safe spaces is how I can let go, and also let other people know that they can let go of that shame. And I carried it with me for so long because I really believed it was my fault because I had got that drunk, and I told myself I was just that kind of girl that kind of thing happened to. And it wasn't the only time it happened to me, because I had such low self-esteem and I had no regard for my health and safety. I just, feel very lucky, honestly, that like nothing worse happened over the years, but I definitely put myself in a lot more dangerous situations, and I was just not being at all responsible with my health. It's often like how these things do repeat. But I think I was listening to a Brené Brown podcast, and she was talking about how if you can't hear me, you can't see me. And that really resonated with me. So like I'm feeling right now like I'm like in my mid-30s, I've had my daughters, I've learned so much about myself, and I want to be my most authentic self. And it's like, okay, so I've got to really like share everything. And maybe, I'm sure not everyone feels like they need to go and write a book and share all their like deepest, darkest secrets, but it's very freeing.
It's so freeing. And then it makes you feel less terrified of those things that you've trapped in a little box over here that you don't want to look at, because you're talking about them. They can't get you anymore. They can't hurt you.
They can't hurt you. It's when they're your secrets and you're like, I've got to keep them hidden and not think about it. And it's like you can just let them out the box, let them go.
Yeah. And then you are completely yourself without having to filter and pretend. But I think the biggest shift can only really happen, especially in the context of self-destructive behaviour, when you value yourself. And it's really hard to go from not giving a shit about yourself to valuing yourself. I've been through that experience. Yeah. I'm still on that path now, and will have days where I don't value myself or can easily spiral into self-loathing, and I have to give myself a good talking to, or talk to someone that I know does care about me or wants to help me feel good about myself. But it's a really tricky shift. What do you think the starting point was? Obviously sobriety, but what other mental shifts took place for you to start actually caring about yourself?
I would say having my children and seeing myself as a mother, and seeing my children and wanting to be the best person I could be for them, and wanting them to grow up with a mother that was going to be present, that wasn't going to be hungover every weekend, that wasn't going to be so anxious that she couldn't communicate properly with them. I didn't want them to grow up and be influenced by having a mother with a drinking problem that was, checked out half the time. Or I remember one time I had to look after the kids by myself all day, and I was taking a Xanax just to be able to cope with the level of anxiety I had from the alcohol that I'd drunk the night before. And I was like, this is not okay. I don't want to be just so numb. I don't want to miss this. This is their childhood. And it was stealing joy.
Yeah.
I think seeing myself become a mother and wanting to really just to show up, and ultimately through this process of healing, the journey I've been on with healing since I've been sober, I've started to learn how to reparent myself and how to imagine myself as the girls, like as their age, if I'm cuddling them, I imagine sometimes that I'm giving myself a hug, and it's like me as a child, and my older daughter looks identical to me as I did as a child. So that is quite funny sometimes. I just imagine like I'm saying, what would I say to myself? And that kind of inner child work has really helped.
Oh my God, it's so important. We've actually just done a podcast this morning where we did a deep dive into all of this, looking at who we were as kids, what was said to us as kids, and how we can now parent that part of ourselves that we've abandoned, that we've shoved in a box that we don't want to look at. And it is such a healthy thing to do and an amazing way to change how you think about yourself and how you move through the world. It's so important. I mean, you say in the book the most uncomfortable part was talking about Xanax and the fact that you had this dependency and it went hand in hand with alcohol, counterbalance the anxiety you felt, but then it wouldn't stop you drinking again maybe that day or that evening. Have you made peace with the fact that you had a problem with it?
Yes, but I think maybe people don't care as much as I thought they would. I think sometimes in our minds we can think, oh God, if people found that out, it would be like the worst thing ever. But it is a lot of people do use it. Obviously it is a prescribed medicine, and it's very addictive. And the more you take it, the more you want to take, the more your brain wants it, and then the same amount doesn't work for you anymore. And it was, again, readily available, prescribed by a doctor. I started taking it for anxiety and then dangerously slipped into sometimes mixing it with alcohol or taking it to cope with my hangover. And then suddenly my hangover was gone and then I could drink again. So it was a really vicious cycle. And over the years, it slipped from being occasional use to, it wasn't, every day, but it was by the end, it was definitely every couple of days. And I was just completely glazed over. I look back at pictures of myself and it's like my eyes are just like, I'm just not there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can now look back at that version of yourself with deep compassion and think, fuck, I was struggling. I was coping the best way I can. Do you feel like you can forgive yourself for the things that you deem are mistakes or the moments that you do feel shame or regret over?
Yes. And I think it's really important to forgive yourself. And through the process of understanding more about myself, how my past traumas have led me to act in a certain way, how my ADHD has even led me to act in certain ways because my brain has been seeking the dopamine, and it makes you much more likely to abuse an addictive substance. So that's really allowed me to be a lot kinder to myself as well. It kind of explains maybe why I felt like more of an outsider when I was younger. Struggled a lot at school. And
I mean, that's a newer diagnosis, isn't it?
I've
ADHD.
had that in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant that we're talking about this now because, I mean, we've done a couple of episodes on ADHD with either people that are experts in it or that have ADHD. And when we were kids, it wasn't talked about. You were either the daydreamer. I certainly was.
I was told all my reports said I was
Same.
Always daydreaming.
Daydreamer, talks too much. It was like, literally, that was my school report, just relentlessly. Or if you were a boy at school, you were disruptive, you would fidget too much, and that was the end of it. And you were just sort of cast aside as a slight problem in the classroom or sent out quite regularly, as I was. But now we're talking about it, and there is an actual understanding of it. And you can look back on not only your childhood, but how you seek dopamine now or how you move through the world now. And actually, all you were doing was trying to cope the whole time with a brain that works in a slightly different way to, typical brains.
It's just like having so many different thoughts at the same time, and just the alcohol, have a couple of drinks would just turn down the noise. And I can completely understand now why I felt that I needed to do that. And actually since January, I've been doing no sugar because I've been listening to lots of podcasts about how you can, manage your ADHD through kind of diet and what you eat, and through lots of other like lifestyle tweaks that you can make. And
has it helped?
Yeah, it's really helped.
Yeah, we had this amazing. I think she's classified as a naturopath and nutritionist called Lucinda Miller, and she talked on here all about sugar and ADHD. It was probably more directed towards parents and kids, but she has ADHD, so she's learned how to eat well herself and maintain a much more balanced thought process throughout the day by, one of them, eliminating sugar, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it with my kids as well.
Oh, that is
I made them
a nightmare.
I made them these like cupcakes this week, and they just refused, like no sugar. They refused to eat them.
This is what the whole time I'm trying to make healthy snacks, and they're like, I'm not eating it, and you've just wasted 2 hours Googling something and making it, and they're like, that tastes like shit, I'm not eating it.
I'm just going to keep trying.
Keep trying. We can only try. The effort is there. So how, obviously, no sugar, you're not drinking. In terms of ADHD, is there any other changes you've made that you know help you navigate situations that might make you feel like your brain's racing, that you're slightly out of control? What helps?
Exercise is a big one. And exercise for like first thing in the morning, getting out in daylight and getting that like natural light really helps. And I like running. I find that really helps, particularly with my thought process. If I've got something where I really need to focus, if I go for like a half an hour run, just like a jog, not super fast, I've suddenly got so many like productive thoughts. I can just sit down and get loads done.
Yeah, and have that clarity.
Trying to get it's like all the stuff that just helps with mental health anyway, like trying to get enough sleep. I find just having a routine, it really works for me. Over the Christmas holidays I didn't have my usual routine and I've just really struggled actually.
Oh my God, same. It's like, what day is
I
it?
think all parents.
It's just like my kids are staying up too late, they're on screens all the time. It's just get them back to school.
Yeah.
You talk about intrusive thoughts in the book too, and this is something that many people who will have stopped drinking, especially in social situations, will find very hard to navigate. When you've got intrusive thoughts, I mean, I have OCD, so when my intrusive thoughts are bad, and mine isn't relentless all day long, all the time, but if I'm really stressed out, something's bothering me, the intrusive thought part of OCD can be completely overwhelming, where it's non-stop. And if I get into a little negative thought loop and there's this one thought that will not leave my head, I literally feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know what to do. And I think when it's a very specific flavour of intrusive thought, like alcohol, and you're out and you're in a bar or you're at a party and there's a barman stood with a tray of drinks, how the hell do you not pick up that drink? Because those intrusive thoughts are so loud. What are you doing in those situations?
I think the best thing you can do is distraction, because your brain is like focused on that one thought. So you need to like change your environment. So like I also find moving really helpful. But if you are in a bar and really struggling with that thought, I would say leave. Put yourself first. You're not selfish. Whoever you're with will have to understand that it's for your health, and that you've got to stick to your decisions. So I'd say just get yourself out of the situation. Call a friend. I've made myself watch I think it was Selling Sunset or something, just to take my brain, just take my brain somewhere else. Reach out to somebody that has been supportive on that journey, be it my sober coach or sober friend. Just be like, oh God, I'm having these thoughts. Just verbalize it. Just say it out loud, because then it also takes it out of your head, and you're able to go, or like if you feel like you could journal in that moment. It's very hard to maybe sit and meditate. But do something that changes your environment. Listen to music that you know the words to, and just like sing along.
Yeah, I think it's really good just to say out loud, like, I'm leaving, I'm out. Like, if you can't cope with it, you shouldn't have to sit there and suffer and deal with it and have that all going on in your head. Just walk out. If it's a great friend, they'll totally get it. You've mentioned a couple of times your sober coach. For anyone that doesn't know what that consists of, how you might work with one, what do they do?
So it's like a therapist who specifically works on helping you understand your relationship with any addictive substance or any, I guess it's not just always a substance, is it? Sometimes it's gambling or sex or food. And he was someone I'd actually seen before. I tried to stop drinking before I had kids, and after about a month I'd convinced myself that I could now drink responsibly, and obviously it didn't last. But I went back to him actually and I said, I'm serious this time. And I saw him every week, either online or just over Zoom. And he really explained to me, it's not removing the first thing you're doing is removing the drink, and not going, every day being like, okay, I'm not going to drink. But then it's like, why do you want to drink, and what's coming up, and what are all your deep rooted issues, and really having to go into childhood stuff and all the places I didn't want to look. and it took me a good few sessions before I had a breakthrough. I was like, oh, why does he keep going there? There's nothing there. Like,
yeah.
And then
I had a great childhood. Everything was fine. No problems there.
And then they like crack you open, and you're like, whoa, yeah.
And that's confronting. I mean, this is the thing. It's not about being disciplined. I think most people assume that with breaking any detrimental habit, it's, oh, they're just more disciplined than me. I don't think many of us are naturally disciplined. I think it's a really hard thing to land on, that you are just this regimented, disciplined person. It's actually the willingness to look at the why. Why am I doing this? What is the cause of it? And that's not easy. You know, it's hard work. It's hard to delve into the past and look at things that make you feel deeply uncomfortable and make you squirm, or you just flat refuse to go there. But it is a much more solid route to breaking a habit, because you understand it.
Yeah, and he was very straight talking, and he didn't sugarcoat things, and I really needed that directness, and that I found the right person for me. I think with any kind of therapy relationship, it's got to be the right person for you. But there are like loads of places people can look for support, whether it's online or in person, and they want like more of a group element where you've got that kind of group sharing. There's lots of sober coaches that offer courses as well. I've got a friend who's in AA, and I'm actually really interested in doing the 12 steps. We talk about the step work quite a lot, and actually we're going to do the 12 steps together over the next year and do them just the two of us.
It's a really great modality for anything, even outside of alcohol, just like self-examination and creating inventories about people and places and things. It's really, really cool. Obviously in the book, and you've mentioned here today, your husband Hugo, and his role in your life as your partner and your best friend and someone that massively looks out for you. I think there'll be many people listening to this that will be the Hugo in the situation, that has deep worries about the person they're married to or they're best friends with or their brother or sister to, whatever. And they want that person to make positive changes, but they're not. And I'm sure you'll recognise that breaking any habit, you know, I can look back at when I had bulimia and people were worried about me, or I knew that what I was doing was a terrible, terrible idea. But until I was ready, and I don't even know why I got to that place, but until I was ready, I couldn't do a thing. I had good intent, but it would never happen. You've got to be ready. But what advice would you give, or what would you say to somebody in Hugo's position where they care so deeply about someone and they want them to get better and to make changes, but you're kind of out of control? What was helpful to you in those moments when Hugo was sort of talking to you?
I think just being able to hold space for somebody and really allowing the space to have those difficult conversations and to really understand what's coming up for them. You know, we're just very real with each other now. I can tell him my weird intrusive thoughts. To be honest, I realised after I had kids, we didn't have a deeper connection, because the age when we'd first met each other, I was actually 16 when I first met him, and even when we got back together after I was divorced, we fancied each other, we loved each other, but we didn't really like connect on a deeper level. It was still very much all just like we were attracted to each other. We just knew that we wanted to be together. But it wasn't until I was on my own sobriety journey that I started to be like, we actually don't know each other on a deeper level. And we both our marriage was really not in a good place. Not just after I stopped drinking, but I'd say even a year in. So I was just having a hard time myself mentally. When I started to feel better in myself, I could also do more work on the relationship and kind of I feel like we've just been able to meet each other more in the same place. And he knows me better than anyone. But I think he's been really understanding. But I had to own up to, we did couples therapy, and I really had to own up to the harm that I'd caused him in the relationship through my drinking and the horrible things I'd said to him. I turned into quite a mean drunk in the last couple of years of drinking, which I do feel horrible about that. And I think we've resolved the issues now, but we weren't dealing with our issues, and that was another reason. I think I would just drink and not talk about it, but then it would all come out in the wrong way when I was drunk.
Yeah, and how brilliant you can sit and say that. Like, we've all said massively fucked up things to people, all of us, and we've done things that are regrettable or have felt not very nice. And I think it's bizarre when we pretend otherwise, and that's, I guess, when we start judging other people and going, you're this, you're that, and we're not looking at our own mistakes that we've all made, and how healthy that you can talk to him about that really openly, and it's actually brought so much more of a deeper connection between you both and a stronger marriage out of it. And again, you know, you talk about this in the book, because there'll be people at home now listening thinking, well, I want to stop drinking, but my partner still drinks. And Hugo does drink, but you navigate that pretty well.
I don't have an issue with him drinking. I'd say he definitely drinks less. He's doing dry Jan at the moment, and he can do a month without drinking, and he always feels really good and does it a couple of times a year. But he doesn't drink a lot at home. He goes out occasionally, like lots of his friends now have young kids as well, or having babies.
That's gonna slow things down in the drink department.
So yeah, and sometimes, you know, he might have a glass of wine at home, but I don't have any issue being around alcohol. It doesn't tempt me if there's alcohol in the house. I probably wouldn't want to go on a night out with him when he was going to get super drunk, but that's actually pretty rare now anyway. But if he was going to do that, it would probably be letting off some steam with a couple of his guy mates, and they probably get in at like 1 a.m. It's we've all changed quite a lot
with age and experience.
But if he is out and he's hungover in the morning on the weekend, I enjoy getting up early with the girls and having that time, just us.
Yeah,
anyway.
So nice. I mean, I'm sure your answers will be unsurprising, because we can all imagine what sobriety brings. But what do you think the benefits to living a sober life are for you?
The benefits are, it's like the clarity, knowing I'm not going to wake up with a hangover tomorrow. Whereas before it was like, oh, well, I'm going to go for dinner later and maybe I'll have one drink, and who knows, like that night I could end up being out till 3 a.m. and then whatever I had planned the next day would be very difficult to get through, and I'd be a complete mess. And it was just this kind of roller coaster, and now it's like I found a lot more balance. My nervous system is a lot more balanced, thank God. And I value the small things a lot more. More present. I'm still working on that, because I'm very good at being very busy all the time and focusing on embracing slowness, really getting to know myself, enjoying time on my own. That's something that a real gift. I realised how much I actually just love being alone.
Oh, me too. But you used to actively hate that. You used to hate being on your own.
I used to hate being. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts at all. Now I actually would like. The idea of spending a weekend on my own is like, oh my God.
Literally
heaven.
I can't think of anything better than just being on my own.
Just like in my house. So like maybe just with my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he loves me and he's not going to say anything to me. And he's not going to ask me to do anything. It's great.
Like, also, parenting is really challenging.
It's full on.
It's really full on. And I was being quite reactive as a parent. And then afterwards being like, I don't want to parent like that. Why do I go to that place and kids are triggering me, and oh my God, I'm being shouty, and oh my God, like just afterwards just really hating how I'd responded to them. And sometimes that does still happen.
Of course. It's hard.
But I'm able, I think, to be a more conscious parent.
Yeah. I mean, the benefits are endless, and you've beautifully illustrated these in your book, that by going completely sober or having moments of sobriety, especially if you know it's a problem for you, are only going to bring you brilliant benefits. But it's not a smooth journey to get there. I think it's so important that you outline in the book, and we've chatted today about the fact that it's confronting. You need to look at your past. You need to you're going to have clarity whether you like it or not about stuff that you don't want to look at. But it all takes you to a place of feeling better, which does lead me to my last question, which is, Millie, where is your happy place?
My happy place is on a beach in the Maldives with my family.
Can we just go now? Get me there now.
Whenever I'm stressed, I go to my happy place. I'm sat sat on the beach. I'm looking out at the ocean, and the kids are like playing next to me. Hugo's there, the sun's shining, just the sound of the waves, just me, my family, just paradise.
Dreamy.
Like I go there in my mind all the time.
Yeah, that's a lovely, happy place. I love it. Well, look, thank you so much. I think this has just been an amazingly honest, frank and important conversation. And I urge anyone who feels this chat resonates to go and get your brilliant book, Bad Drunk, because it's an important read. Thank you so much, Millie.
Oh, thank you for having me.